Welcome to episode 39 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast, covering May 8th to May 14th. And happy Mother's Day to everybody. I just got back home from Mother's Day in Palm Springs, California, and I got to rest a little bit finally after all the work that I had to do in the last couple of months, really. Pretty much slept all Saturday and spent a little bit of Sunday with my mom, but it was pretty good. We had some good stuff to eat. The week was a little slow with immigration news, but there were some interesting topics that came up I wanted to discuss. So without further ado, we'll get the program started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. Welcome back. One of the most interesting things that I read actually came out yesterday was a congressman introduced a bill into legislation. The bill text isn't up yet, but the idea is to allow states to make their own decisions with regards to immigration, allowing a certain number of work-based visas to come out where they're 3 years renewable, and the person can stay in that one state and not work in other states. But if there's a compact between various states, they can move around those areas and not be beholden to an employer, which leads to a lot of abuse. And it's one of the reasons the employment-based categories are troublesome for me. I just don't like the way the employer controls the whole thing and puts the immigrant or the non-immigrant in a difficult position. So that's interesting. We'll see how far that goes. But I like the idea of federalizing the situation because central power can't make a proper decision on it, so we have to think about other solutions. I'm sure that's going to be changed a lot by the time it comes to the end, but that's something to back. So once it moves forward, I'll keep talking about that and try to get a bigger push for that, or try to contact Congress and do an interview. I've had a very difficult time with the Congress people setting up interviews. They say they'll do it, staff says they'll do it, then they disappear, they don't respond to emails. I've been trying, but I'll push the issue and try to get a couple of them on in the near future. Another quick note I wanted to make, I made the recommendation about using the Venmo app for transferring funds from clients. It's a quick, easier way to get paid without transaction costs. But I just got notice on Venmo that they said you're using your account for business purposes. You're not allowed to do that. Apparently it was in the fine print that I just didn't read, so I had to stop using that. They recommended I use PayPal, which is essentially seems like a credit card where they're going to charge a few percent, which I don't like. So the system was good as it was, but apparently it's only for personal use, not for business purposes. So I wanted people to know that in case they were using that system. Now the executive order, which is could be the biggest shakeup in all of this, has been having court hearings in the appeals courts. I think in the Fourth Circuit, they're still discussing it. It's not clear what's going to happen with that. I still get calls from a lot of people asking what's going on with the ban, or is it creating problems? The reality is the ban doesn't exist as it is right now. It's just on hold, and it's not clear what's going to happen. Now I have a couple of cases where they're waiting for the resolution to that ban. Or the court judgment on it before moving forward, like an E2 case in particular. And I tell them, I don't know, this could take up for a long time. I'd have to go to the Supreme Court. So it is holding up some people, but what I recommend to people is if you're going to do something, do it quickly, especially those faster type of visas, to just get in and we'll figure it out later what's going to happen with that. But it does create a difficulty in making a decision and uncertainty. And that's what I hate. The law shouldn't be uncertain. The easier it is for a person to be able to figure out what the law is and act based on it, the more just system we have. Whenever there's too much opinion and interpretation involved, that's where issues in the law, corruption, and all those problems in jurisprudence and just rule of law and existence of the state comes into a problem. So hopefully that issue could be fixed. Now, with regards to USCIS, I've talked about a couple of times on this podcast about delays in naturalization processing, especially for those cases that were chosen part of the random IOE technological system where they wanted to do naturalization now through a full online system, which had a lot of hiccups and is taking forever. So most of my cases that are going through that have had their interviews, but the problems still continue. Like when we go to the interview, the computer system's broken, so they can't make a decision. So just things are grinding to a halt, really, just because of all the technical issues USCIS is having. So it's freaking out my clients because they interpret it as their case having a problem or they having a problem. And even though I assure them it's just a technical issue, a glitch, these things happen, they get very frustrated because, for example, one client's looking at these third-party sites. I think it's called track.it or something like that, .com or something like that. And it's other people saying how long it took them to get their citizenship, their green card, this and that. I also have the same with the green card case. And I keep telling them, just because most people do it doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. You can't assume that everyone's going to be the same in an immigration case. Just like medicine, you might have 90% recovery rate after a certain surgery, but if you're part of those 10%, you're part of those 10%. You can't compare yourself with other people. Each case is individual, and that's a difficult thing for clients to understand. Even from the beginning of the consultation, say, your chances are very good, things are looking good, but anything can happen just because it's the world. Anything is possible in the world. And so that their frustration, their worry becomes a problem. How to calm them down, how to explain it. And after a while, when they don't want to listen, just be like, it is what it is. If you get a second opinion or something, there's not much I can do about it. So that's a little issue that comes with practice management. With regards to practice management, I've been talking about INS Zoom now for some time, about my experience with this stuff, and I've been pretty negative about it. Well, finally, I buckled down, spent many hours playing with the software and customizing everything, and it's actually pretty good. So the problem with INS Zoom is this: you have to learn the language of using INS Zoom, and that requires time and patience. And that's the problem. Like, once you learn how to speak the language, then it's easy enough because you're speaking the language. But learning the language takes at least 3-4 hours, if not double or triple that. You have to talk to their employees and customer service and learn how things work. And it might not take as much time for you, but I wanted to customize my questionnaires and my emails and customize everything to exactly the way I want it to be. And to set up that customization, for example, I created my own custom forms for marriage cases. Well, I had to go in there, retype it, type it, put in different orders, to test it out how this works, learn how to merge their template forms that they have into one, and then picking and choosing which questions I want to use from their templates. So all that took a lot of time. But once eventually got through it, now I'm whizzing through because I know where everything is. So the problem is that you got to learn how to use it. Now, I think the other software is probably the same, and that's one interesting thing is, like, I appreciate why they don't want people to just get the software and test it out before they speak with you and to help you about it, because it's gonna freak you out once you try to do something, you can't figure it out, and you think it's garbage software because you have to learn the language. So that's something to be mindful of. Now, the price on Zoom is more reasonable compared to the competitors. I'm still testing it out, and I'm going to still work on the other stuff. If I had the time, some ideal thing would be to test all the software, learn them all, and talk about it on the show. I think that would be interesting, but that's very time consuming and very stressful, learning new languages constantly. But that'd be something neat to do if I had the time. Who knows? So that's that. It was another good week for me in the sense that I got another job for another immigration attorney in the city in Los Angeles. So that was a neat thing to do, to just continue that aspect of my work. And I was also able to have a separate interview for the podcast with an attorney. His name is Peter Alfresiabi. He actually does intellectual property, but as a pro bono thing for many years. He has a clinic, and he's been practicing immigration appellate matters, or cases that have damaged in immigration court hearings, to try to push the issue with the appellate courts, and really writing multiple books about the situation. And a new book he's written, which is going to come out next month, which I'll probably have another interview with him about. But we discussed the nature of the beast right now for those going through deportation removal hearings, and the inability to really appeal stuff because of recent changes in the 90s that forbid federal courts are reviewing some parts of immigration court decisions, and then discussing how we could help the system. And one thing, and if you listen to the interview, I'll try to release it this week, is that there are a lot of attorneys, non-immigration attorneys, that are ready to help, but they don't have the knowledge necessarily. There are a lot of immigration groups that have the knowledge, that want to teach it, but they don't have connections with those immigration attorneys. And there's a lot of people out there, and a lot of pro bono organizations that are helping them, but don't have the bandwidth to do it, and they can't connect with these lawyers who don't know what they're doing. So there's all of this, seems like all the pieces to help people out in the immigration court system are just hanging out, and they're there, but there hasn't been a way to connect it. And one thing I I plan on doing and working on was with the local ALA chapter, Southern California, and their pro bono liaisons, and with LACBA, the County Bar Association, to try to bring all the pieces together so we could connect the client with the educated, private practitioner litigator, let them know how the immigration process works and how it's, there's no depositions and the rules of evidence are not there, and how informal the immigration court system is so they feel more comfortable, and providing some sort of help to these people that are going through immigration proceedings so they could do something. Now, I've talked about in previous podcasts about states like New York and stuff that are using taxpayer money to fund people in immigration court hearings, and it was sort of troublesome to me because we're using taxpayer funds for people that are potentially here unlawfully and stuff. So I wasn't sure how to deal with that, but I do believe 100% that whenever someone is dealing with the state and the power behind the state, they need to have representation. So definitely doing pro bono stuff is definitely within what I would like to do and what I like to see. Going to court just isn't, at this point in my life, the thing that really I think I can add and contribute. However, if I'm the person setting up the logistics for all this to go down, that's just as good. I can actually help more people than the individuals I could individually help with this process. So one thing in the coming months is, and really sooner the better, is to try to connect these varying parts together. And if you're doing some of this already in your neck of the woods, or if you have plans on doing this, please email me and we could talk and connect it all. info@jqqlaw.com is my email. Because we have, if you're in San Francisco listening to this and you want to create something like that with your local chapter and your local pro bono community, there's clients also that move to LA. Our clients move to San Francisco. It's a good way to connect and be communication and not reinvent the wheel. So if you learn something that's helpful, if you have some sort of seminar you recorded, or anything like that, any sort of handouts, sheets, and all this kind of stuff that we don't need to redo, or we can send it to you. Just stay in touch and have this network. I think that's a grassroots, real network of people that just want to come and help, not getting the government involved to pay for it. Because unfortunately, I've seen, even if the government does create some sort of help immigration group and funding, it's probably not going to be that good a quality. So it's up to us to do this and to pay back and do what we need to do. So please communicate with me on that. And if you know non-immigration attorneys interested in getting involved and learning the process, definitely let them know it's doable and it's possible for them to get involved. I mean, any attorney is better than no attorney in immigration court hearings, but an educated attorney going there could go really far. So that's something really neat to do. I got 2 calls this week, and it just reinforces the need for everyone to have immigration attorneys. This first one more than the second one, but I got an email from a person, U.S. citizen spouse, petitions for alien relative, immediate relative. I-130 gets approved, MVC portion comes. MVC sends a visa notice, for civil documents, blah blah blah, for the wife that's abroad. And then they emailed me saying, how come it didn't come from my young child from my previous marriage? I'm like, and it's not my case, it's just random people emailing me. I was like, well, immediate relative is only one. You can't do a group petition for an immediate relative that's a U.S. citizen relative. So the gentleman that was a U.S. citizen should have sent a separate I-130 petition for the child in addition to the individual I-130 for the spouse. And so they're now 6 months into it, or maybe 8 months of the MVC's responding. The mother's going to get her visa pretty soon, and the child's going to be left motherless, so she has to wait now. So for no reason, because of lack of education on the matter, they just extended everything. Unfortunately, immigration system for family cases should be easier, so people could do it on their own and all that, but it's not the case. So people at least need to go do a consultation before they jump the shark and try to do it themselves. And it's just sad because now they have to wait. Potentially a child could have got the visa now during the summer so they can start the new school year in the U.S. But if they want to do an I-130 now, they're going to have to wait. It's going to be winter, new school year starts, and the whole life cycle breaks apart. The spouse is going to be separated from a U.S. citizen husband for an extended period of time. That could create disruption in their personal life and everything. So it's like, just call a lawyer. Not all lawyers charge a consultation. Go talk to them. Maybe they'll explain that you got to do 2 petitions. Whatever amount of money they spent on that lawyer, if they'd done it through a lawyer, would have been worth it, because time is the most valuable thing, and that's worth more than gold, and they just wasted a bunch of time now. So it's hard to say that, especially because finances are tough. It's hard to tell somebody to pay a bunch of money to get this done. But one thing I've learned is, you want good help, you pay for it and you get it. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive. You go to different communities. I mean, you can go on the internet and research this stuff or read the I-130 instructions. Problems, people aren't going to do that. So even when I do give instructions to people, like I had another client called me. I'm not sure if I talked about this last week or not, but they contacted me through Facebook. I told them briefly what they need to do, but I said, listen, you need a consultation. I can't help you like this. But essentially, I said, if you're planning on getting married to your spouse, just get married sooner so that you can start the process sooner. So months go by, I get an email, and the person in the email says, yeah, we talked on Facebook. You had said that wait 2 or 3 years, then get married and file for the green card. But we're thinking about doing it sooner. Can we have a consultation? So I went to copy paste to the Facebook. I said, that's exact opposite of what I wrote. How did you get that? And so we're going to work with them. It happens a lot, and that's why I'm really strict on not giving advice over the phone and having a full consultation. And I charge my consultations because I have to go and follow up with the person, email them, send it in writing, call them to make sure, because I can't count how many times I said to someone A, and then they said Z, Z, Z. I said no, A. And just you have to write it down, you have to follow up with them, you have to make sure and pretty much do it yourself, because more often than not, if I tell a layman ABC, they're going to say XYZ. And it's just the way it is. It doesn't matter if they're, poor and have no education, or if they're a scientist, a brain surgeon, a NASA scientist. It doesn't matter. It's a human thing, and especially a non-lawyer thing. It's one of those things I realized after law school is the attention to detail lawyers have. It's exactly what's being said. It is what differentiates us. And that's why people always say, oh, a lawyer's coming and they're going to mince words, and like the way lawyers could talk to like not exactly say what they want to say, but give the interpretation that they said, all that kind of stuff. And that's unfortunately a negative way they put it. It goes to their misunderstanding what's being done. We're just exact with our language because, there's consequences to the language and we're responsible for it. But people are fast and loose with the language, and then they think what they heard and they interpret their own way that they want to do. And unfortunately, big problems come up. So, for example, that previous petition where I said immediate relative needs to file for like the U.S. spouse and the child separately, if I just said that over the phone with somebody, I'm sure they would just misunderstand what that means. The whole idea of immediate relative, I won't so I would throw them off. I would need to, even though it's a simple thing, sit them down, talk to them in a meeting with Skype, repeat that 4 or 5 times, and then send it to them in writing, and then do a follow-up email that says, did you read that? Do you know that? Are you good? Even if they don't want to hire me. And you have to do that, because even if one case doesn't go down the right way, 1 out of 100, that's 1 out of 100 people that's going to have a problem in their life that can cause huge disruptions. And that's just the nature of client management and what we have to do in our business. Another quick note is the second thing. A person called that was, filed for adjustment of status through marriage. Marriage interviews happen in a few weeks, and they had a fight and they're breaking up. So I was like, oh man, that's tough. I never had dealt with that issue before. And so I did some research. Apparently there is a case called Boromand, Boromand or something like that. If you type in, the fact pattern, separation before marriage interview, stuff on the internet comes up on Google. It says that you don't necessarily have to still be together. Now you can't be divorced, but you can't, or legally separated, but you can't, and then legal separation is kind of vague, but even if things fall apart before the interview, because the point of the interview, and this is really an I-751 remove conditions as well, the importance is when you did get married, was that marriage real? Now, and it did happen lawfully and everything, not after the fact if it held together. Now, obviously, officers have a lot of discretion in this, and they could pretty much do what they want to do and make a decision, but the case law does says, at the time of marriage, was this good? Now, their marriage was, I had to figure that part out, how much documentation they have about their relationship, how the marriage came about. But just because a person, decides to potentially separate from their spouse and start living together before the interview, that is not a reason an officer should deny the case. I know we have difficulty with the officer buying it and everything, and people are going to, having the other spouse show up to interview might be a problem. That could create issues because then they won't believe it. But if both parties go, and they say, we're just not into each other, we're trying to work it out, that could potentially be a good case. Now, I haven't done it myself. I can see them denying it. What I would tell them to do is, go to couples counseling, pay some money on that to show that you tried at least to get it going. and show maybe family members writing letters that they tried to bring this couple together. Maybe they went to their church and talked to their imam or their cleric that's there, priest or whoever, that said they've tried talking with them to reconcile and everything, but it didn't work out. And so that's just one thing to use. Knowing how tough officers are, I'm not sure how well that's going to work out, but that's something that you might try. Shout out to Brian M. Actually, we have a new listener who's a watcher to the podcast, who's really cool background. Unfortunately, I can't talk about it, but that was really neat that he reached out and talked and helped keep our friendship alive. The network is really growing for the podcast. So once it hits a critical mass, I'm going to bring it all together and maybe do a Facebook page where we can have better communications. Now, I do have a listserv that I talked about in the past, and this issue's come up. Originally I had made a listserv just for immigration lawyers that deal with Iranian cases, because Iranian cases have a lot of problems. There's huge delays, there's document issues, there's all these kind of problems. So as a way to share information between immigration attorneys that deal with Iranian cases, I reached out and added like 100 immigration lawyers that deal with Iranian cases because of the specific problems they have. They added a couple of attorneys that do OFAC and criminal law and family law, and a couple of actually Iranian attorneys in Iran, so that we have like a 360 a group that could really analyze cases and help each other out. And that worked out really good, so I thought, you know what, I'll do separate areas too: the Southeast Asia, East Asia, South Asia, Europe and Canada, Latin America. And when I started those groups, I was more posting my own questions and involved in it. They're all going into stuff. Eventually, only the Iranian group gained traction, where it just has its own life and people are participating, especially with the news executive order. That group is really strong because there's just so much information to share. But the other groups don't really participate as much, and it rarely is there movement on it. So if you're dealing with Iranian cases, 100% you're going to gain from joining the Iranian group, and you can always email me and I'll add you to that list, info@jklaw.com, if you're an attorney. The rest of the groups, I have an idea of consolidating it, or if I just post more questions of my own there, people remember how it is. And what the email addresses is sent to ask questions, and things go forward. But I just haven't had that. And honestly, I have a lot of research books I try to study, and friends I ask quick questions from rather than posting. But I should get to posting in that just to keep it alive. But the Iranian group is strong. Debating on what's going to happen with the other groups. But it was an interesting little project. I tried to go big too quick, but with doing the whole world and everything. But it was a fun experiment. It's sort of working out. I've been able to use it before. So that takes care of a lot of the big stuff that's been on my mind. The last thing I'll leave with is some interesting thoughts I had. This week I had a lunch with two professionals. One's an attorney, one was a professional, like high-end real estate agent, as part of his networking group I'm part of. And during the lunch, we just started talking about life and decisions. And one thing that came up is what holds you back from making decisions you want to do. One gentleman talked about about fears of making certain decisions in life because of how he's raised and the trouble, for example, his father gave him about, Monday morning quarterbacking, at the end of the phrase, of going back in decisions and calling him out of mistakes he made and stuff like that. And it created such a burden on him that it was hard for him to make decisions because he was worried about making the wrong decision and the consequences that's going to have. And I felt him because I had the same situation with my father, always negative, always bring it down, shouldn't be immigration attorney, should go to a big corporate attorney. Not understanding that, that's just not the kind of person I am. I want to follow my heart and my dreams, and I've made it grow and work out just as well. But that really held him back, and I really felt for him. And the other colleague I was there, he said, it's fear. It's fear that it drives us as human beings. We think we're all intellectual, especially lawyers, that we think and know stuff, but it's really emotional responses that we do for everything we do. We might couch it in different terms, but that inner reptilian part of the brain reacts to things, and then we kind of go and analyze afterwards and try to make it sound like it was logical. For most part, especially most individuals in this world, it takes a lot of energy not to be like that. But the biggest type of emotion that does drive it is fear, and so the fear reaction drives you every aspect of our lives. And his example was that he was in a relationship, a marriage that was just not going anywhere. It was terrible. It was causing him anxiety and depression. But he knew the consequences of divorce were family issues, what's happening to the child, what's going to happen with the money, the this and that. And it got so hard that he was just having physical expressions of that inner turmoil and depression, and it was causing anxiety attacks and problems with work and all these kind of issues. And he got help and talked with the psychologist about it. And he said eventually I did hypnotherapy that helped me deal with the stress and just come to terms that there's fear, and this fear exists, but just you got to go through it. Eventually he was able to make his life much better once the separation happened, and normally the fear is bigger than the reality of what happened, so he was able to overcome it and life got much better. So it got me thinking about my life and where these fear points came in, and there was like a couple of things that I hope I could help with regards to fear. Is that fear is something that could really just stop you in your tracks and just make you not be able to move forward. And when I was a young kid, I had points where I had terrible fear of things, and one of the main ways I learned how to deal with it, and actually got it from a comic book I was reading when I was a kid, is I think it was a Superman comic book. It's to look directly at what the fear is and just stare at it, go through your mind, live what it is, and understand. Although this situation happening, death or being hurt or relationships, it does hurt, but it's just that it's something that comes and goes, and the living that fear is more damaging than anything else. One specific example that happened was my fear of complete darkness because of like fear of being blind. And I was at my uncle's house once, and he has a basement room because his basement had no windows. So at nighttime, when you turn off the lights and doors closed, if the television in the room was on, it was bright. But as soon as the television turned off, pitch black, like absolute zero light. And I remember I was put the television on sleep mode, and I was probably like 12 or something. So I fell asleep, the television turned off on its own, and I woke up middle of the night, and when I opened my eyes, it was as if my eyes were so closed I couldn't see anything, and I started really hyperventilating, looking for the remote controls like I turn on television. And eventually I found it, turned it on, and calmed down. Same thing happened again next night. But before that, I said to myself, that kind of panic is not normal. I shouldn't have to be freaking out about complete darkness. And so what's the worst? You get blind, it's just, well, there's people that are blind, they live their lives, it's not something you're afraid about, and it's just something that is, that fear is worse than the actual thing happening. So next night, I intentionally actually woke myself in the middle of the night, and just opened my eyes, and sat there with my eyes open, and just looked into the darkness. And it was that panic set in, oh my god, my eyes aren't working. But then, after a couple seconds, after a minute or two, it was a crazy peace, and crazy peace is probably doesn't work together, but a very great peace that came in me. And after that, I actually took great joy in darkness. And so when I go to sleep, I actually love it when there's complete darkness. There's a calmness that comes with it. So something that was absolute fear for me became absolute pleasure now. And actually, when there is a light in the room, it bothers me. I prefer to be complete darkness when I'm sleeping. It's a very fun thing, and just open my eyes and look into darkness and not have another sense coming in that's taking up my thought process. So dealing with that fear is really important. And then the second part, which goes to immigration practice, is when I started my own practice a few years ago, before that I was working at another firm, and I don't want to speak badly about it. I learned a lot from that firm, from the attorney, and it was a great experience. But the way I wanted to run my firm, the kind of cases I wanted to handle, how I wanted to communicate with my clients, how much attention I wanted to give them, how I wanted to charge things, all these different things were being done differently than the way I wanted to do it. And that was just a difference in preference. But it got to a point where I was just very frustrated. But there is that fear of, what am I going to do, start my own firm out of nowhere? I had been at that firm for 2 years. I hadn't brought in a single client. I was what, I'm going to go from 0 clients bringing here all of a sudden to start my own firm with no salary and no clients? Am I crazy? But the frustration got to a point that the fear of starting my own thing and not being successful, which had held me back every month, where I had this burning sensation where I needed to do my own thing, the fear of it was halting me from doing it. But the frustration with the reality of what I was dealing with got to a point where it overcame the fear, where I said, you know what, I'd rather just not make money for a couple months, I'll figure it out, than to deal with running my cases the way I am, which I don't like doing. I want to do it differently. I don't want to take on these type of cases. I want to really know this area of law the way I want to know it and work, and do community stuff and all that kind of stuff, which I didn't have the ability to do before. So one aspect of fear that I learned from this, one is the first one, with is just confronting it directly, and the second one is, find the alternative that make you happy, and think about that, and make sure that you like that one more, and really think about the future of it. So the fear is there, but the decision to make a change and deal with that fear and the good that comes of it, think about that and let it overshadow the fear. And that's what did it. And for me, I had some support. I have my spouse and my wife helped me, have the confidence to do that. So having support is always helpful. But sometimes you don't have the support. You got to do it all on your own. And making that decision of looking farther past the fear and the good that could come of just overcoming what that fear is, could really lead you to greatness in life. And it's just in personal life and in practice and every aspect of business and relationships. Fear is so debilitating. It has a place for it to make you aware of like what could potentially be an issue, so you could be mindful of that and deal with it. But other than that split second of just saying have fear because this issue exists, it can't go more than that. You have the fear to alert you to think about it, to how to overcome it and what the consequences are, all of that. But anything more than that when it comes to fear is just debilitating. It's something that a mature person shouldn't have. And it's something to deal with on a daily basis. Not to say I don't have fear that comes up. There's fear every day. But, there's a guy I started listening to on the internet. His name is Dan Pena. It's Pena. He's super aggressive and uses bad words and everything. And it's not going to be most people's cup of tea. But he really says, whatever his program is, like, think of something you have fear about every day and deal with it. So constantly do something that's crazy you don't expect or you would cause you fear. Some people it's public speaking. Some people it's asking someone out on a date. Some people it might be, confronting a situation they haven't. But constantly attack fear head on. And that's where you're going to grow huge gains. And there's something I want to share with you because it's been an important part of my life. And just something I hope to continue to do. Just coming on this podcast and having a video done. Because there's a video component of this. You can email me to get the link to the YouTube page. I don't know how to make an easier name other than the youtube.com/AGHD4PLP, whatever they do. I have to switch it up. I forgot how to do that. But just being on video like this, put myself out there, some comments sometimes you get from these trolls. There is the fear aspect, but I say, you know what, the good I could do from doing this and the good that come of it, it overcomes that. So I just put it together. I took some time to think it out, try to figure out stuff that could be troublesome or create problems. But other than that, I said, this is something I want to do, something I'm comfortable with now, and I just need to do it and overcome what that fear is. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. It was a really fun episode. It might be a little shorter than usual. I'm not sure how much the time is, but I wanted to get this information out there. I have another podcast that's going to be released as well with my interview with Peter Afrasiabi. And until next time, if you have any questions, just email me, info@jqqlaw.com. I'm going to be at the New Orleans AILA conference. I'm going to give a speech at the law student conference or law student seminar. I'm going to be at the NBC panel, and I'm going to have a lunch that talks about, new practice techniques in the modern world or something like that. I forgot what the exact title is. So there's different places you come meet me, and you'll probably just see me walk around as well. Please stop me, especially if you've seen the video and know how I look. We'll love to talk to you, exchange cards, and just stay in touch. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. Have a great week.